Welcome back to the Union Show. Work choices and AWAs are still a fact of life for some employees. At Austral Bricks, employees' conditions are segregated. Some are on AWAs and some are on an enterprise agreement. Steve Roach from the CFMEU guides us through this minefield.
The government was elected on the basis of its policy forward with fairness and to deliver on one of the government's important election commitments to end the making of Australian workplace agreements.
The new Fair Work Bill was supposed to signal the death of Australian workplace agreements, or AWAs. However, the law gives no respite to the 500,000 Australians already locked into existing AWAs. A recent Senate inquiry has recommended workers be allowed to opt out when an AWA significantly disadvantages an employee compared to the equivalent award. However, Workplace Minister Julia Gillard immediately dampened down expectations of a shift. This comes as a bitter disappointment to union groups who campaign strongly for the abolition of all existing Australian workplace agreements.
That was the promise the government gave before the election that they have failed to honour. And we suspect that they've probably done a deal with the Business Council, who seem to be, their interests seem to be more important than the humble Aussie worker, and we'd like to see the matter rectified.
A case cited by unions in their submissions to the inquiry was that of Austral Bricks in Victoria, where unions calculate that workers under AWAs and individual transitional employment arrangements, or ITAs, earn up to $7,500 less than their workmates under enterprise agreements.
The position of these AWA guys and the ITAs, being told they've got to work on public holidays and they don't get the same sort of benefits that the EBA guys do if they work public holidays. It's arguable, based on the hours they work each week, that they're being underpaid on the penalty rate side. They're not getting shift loadings, etc.
Heat money.
Heat money.
What do you lose?
Shift loading, dirt money,
long service leave,
time and a half, long service leave, double time.
The inferior conditions of these workers was highlighted when Anzac Day this year fell on a Saturday.
When we redid the EBA last year, we put a provision that all public holidays falling on a weekend shall be observed by a substitute public holiday, right? So what happened last Monday is that all the AWA and the ITA people were told to come to work, and they only supplemented them with a few of the EBA people. Because the EBA people, they've got to pay penalty rates too for working on a substitute public holiday.
And they don't have to pay penalties.
With the AWAs or the ITs, they don't pay the penalty rates. So they've got to work. And, it causes disputation.
Another example is the fact that these workers do not qualify for penalty rates until they've worked more than 60 hours in a week, a situation exploited by the company, who uses the workers as a cheap source of labour rather than pay penalty rates to the workers on enterprise agreements.
It's happened to me being in excess of 55 hours on 4 occasions, between 55 and 59.
Look, I don't know if people realise that Australian history, but Governor King, who essentially came out on the First Fleet, Governor King even decreed certain hours of work for the convicts. And I'm damn sure that the convict provisions on hours of work were more generous than Austral Bricks provisions on hours of work. So, with their AWAs, I mean that might be a sort of a glib explanation, but I can assure you that the feeling I've got is that they've sent us back about 200 years. You know, a 60-hour working week. I mean, when we had the regulation and hours of work established through the arbitration system around the turn of the last century, I mean, we weren't working a 60-hour week.
Mr. Partridge has said that you signed those contracts of your own volition. What were the circumstances of you signing those contracts to get the job?
That was it.
That was
the only option we were given.
So in order to get a job at Austral Bricks, you had to sign a 5-year AWA.
Agreement, that's right.
With the signing of the AWA being a condition of employment, it is hardly surprising that company CEO Lindsay Partridge was recently quoted as saying the workers would not be allowed to opt out. However, he's also quoted as saying that he was willing to discuss the option of moving to an enterprise agreement if requested. something the workers say they have been trying to do for months.
What happened when you spoke to management?
They said they would get back to me within a couple of weeks and present it to me and the other boys. And when I went back to speak to him 2 weeks later, nothing had been done. And that's where it was left.
Have they said...
That was March.
Well, bosses like Lindsay Partridge are happy to shut out collective bargaining for as long as possible. For many unions and working Australians, this continuation of a key element of Howard's work choices is nothing short of a betrayal by the Labor government.
I think that the federal Labor government should honour their commitment, a very clear commitment they gave to the people of Australia that they were going to tear up work choices. We went and lobbied and campaigned and spent millions of dollars of union members' money to promote the election of these people. I would have thought that the least they could do would be to honour the promise that they made.
No difference between me and Mick, Darren, Wayne, Ray, there's no difference. We all work in the same factory. We should be on the same agreement, EPA agreement. They want to go on it, the company doesn't want to let them go on. Simple as that.
For the AWA blokes, they're stuck for another 3 years on these things. And the only way out for them is to resign. So where's the benefit of having a Labor Party in at the federal level?
How many of you guys, who voted for Labor in the last election?
I've always voted for Labor.
Now, how much of your vote was based on the fact that the Labor promised to remove work choices?
That was the number one issue.
Yeah? So what happens in the next election? Who do you vote for? Yeah?
We'll vote for somebody else. If they don't honour their commitment, we'll vote for somebody else.
Does everybody feel like that?
Yeah.
We stand behind our policy forward with fairness. It would, of course, end forever the ability of anyone in this country to make an Australian workplace agreement. Mr. Speaker, the Australian people voted for this at the last election. They know what they want.